The southern bank of the Mara River woke up in silence that September morning. A wrong kind of silence. The birds that normally erupt in noise with the first light of day were quiet. The herons had vanished. Even the crocodiles, which usually lie almost motionless in the mud, had pulled back into deep water. The Maasai Mara National Reserve rangers noticed the anomaly before they even saw the body. When they reached the isolated bend where the Mara River curves north, the scene they found stopped both men in their tracks. Between the ground and the vegetation along the bank lay the carcass of an adult male hippopotamus, an animal weighing over a ton, with decades of life and battle etched into every inch of its armored skin. But it wasn't the size of the body that froze the rangers. It was what had happened to him. The animal's head was hanging loose, yet strangely, nothing on that body had been eaten by predators. The head did not appear to have been cut off, but rather separated by a mechanical force so brutal, so visceral in its destructive efficiency, that the single strand of muscle still connecting the head to the body looked absurd, as if nature had left one loose bolt in a structure torn apart by an industrial machine. And this was the third carcass found in 60 days. "38 days earlier, about 2 miles upstream, another adult hippo had been found in the same condition. 50 days before that, the first one. All males, all adults, all with the same impossible wound. The head severely damaged by multiple blows of brute force. Who or what was doing this to 2-ton hippos in the Mara River? Welcome to World Nario. Today, you're going to find out that the biggest serial killer in the African ecosystem doesn't have sharp claws, doesn't roar, isn't a carnivore, and doesn't have spots. So stick with me to the end, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. The Mara River is no ordinary river. It is a vital artery, a highway of water that cuts across the border between Kenya and Tanzania and sustains one of the most violent ecosystems on the planet. This is where the Great Migration happens, the movement of more than 1.5 million wildebeest and zebras crossing the river in search of grazing land, turning the water into an explosion of chaos and blood every year. This is where 13-foot Nile crocodiles lie in position like torpedoes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Mara River is an arena where the only law in force is the law of brute force. During the dry season, that arena shrinks and the danger grows. The water level drops. What was once a broad corridor breaks apart into isolated pools, pockets of hot, fetid mud where animals that would normally keep a safe distance from one another are compressed into spaces too small for predator and prey to share. The tension hanging over those pools is not metaphorical. It is physical, tangible. The reserve guides know how to read that tension at a glance. When the river shrinks too much, something always explodes. The hippopotamus is the third largest land mammal on the planet, behind only elephants and rhinoceroses. An adult male weighs between 1.5 and 3 tons. Its skin can be up to 2 inches thick in the most protected areas. Statistically, it kills more human beings than any other large African mammal, more than lions, more than elephants. And it does so without any feeding motive. Yes, it is a strict herbivore. It kills over territory. Any unauthorized presence in its stretch of river or on its bank is a declaration of war, and declarations of war have one immediate and singular response. This animal's jaw ranks among the 5 strongest on the planet, and combined with its body weight, it is capable of smashing boats and tearing apart anything it considers an enemy. Now think carefully about what happens when you compress dozens of these animals into a space that gets smaller every week. Even though they live in large family groups, rivals tend to stand out. But let's go back to the crime scene, because the mystery is not just the visual horror of what was found. It is the biological logic that wound completely violates. Hippos do sometimes die in territorial fights, but the way those fights work is well documented. Two males face off with their jaws open, shoving, pressing, trying to sink their tusks into the opponent's flanks. The resulting injuries are punctures scattered across the body. The loser backs off and rarely loses his life. If that happens, it may be due to later infections caused by the battle wounds. Hippos do not need to attack all the way to the death of their opponent. The battle is a war of attrition, slow and exhausting. What the rangers found in the Mara River was none of that. It was a deliberate destruction. To inflict that level of damage on an animal weighing over a ton, with 2-inch thick skin on its neck and cervical vertebrae like blocks of concrete, you would need something that African biology, in the minds of the investigators, simply did not possess. The first suspects were obvious. A pride of lions. A large, coordinated pride is capable of bringing down an adult hippo in extreme drought conditions when food is scarce. But the body did not show the marks of a feline attack. There were no multiple claw wounds, bite marks, no signs of a prolonged struggle. And crucially, lions do not decapitate. The mechanics of a big cat's jaws, however powerful, do not produce that result on an adult hippo. The second suspect was the most intuitive, the Nile crocodile. A full-grown specimen can reach 16 feet and weigh over 2,000 pounds. Its jaws are even more powerful than a hippo's, second only to the saltwater crocodile. Its hunting technique, the infamous death roll, has been documented taking down large animals, even full-grown wildebeest. But a crocodile finishes its attack through drowning and rotational dismemberment. It grabs, pulls it to the water, and spins. The resulting injuries are deep lacerations and limbs torn away by violent twisting, not by the conical teeth of that reptile. Besides, nothing had been eaten, no predator had fed on the prey, so the crocodile was ruled out. The third clue led investigators in a different direction: human activity. Given the extent of the cut, some raised the possibility of machinery, a chainsaw, an industrial cutting tool, or the propeller of a motorboat, which occasionally injures hippos when they attempt to attack boats. But that theory collapsed under 3 unanswerable objections. First, no one had reported machinery sounds on the days the carcasses were found. Second, the hippos were killed at isolated points where there is no human traffic, such as safari movement, making them inaccessible for heavy equipment without leaving visible tracks. Third, and most devastating, the tusks of the dead hippos were still intact. An adult hippo has ivory canines worth a fortune on the illegal market. Any poacher who had gotten close enough to saw through the animal's neck would have taken the teeth. All 3 bodies were found with the tusks still in place. The killer was not human. Maybe an elephant in must, a severe hormonal state that makes this giant highly aggressive. But there was not a single footprint indicating the presence of elephants in the area. And at this point, the investigators arrived at a hypothesis that sounded absurd on first reading, but the more it was examined, the more it revealed itself as the only possible explanation. The killer was probably another hippo, but not just any hippo. Monitoring camera records, combined with statements from the guides, began pointing to a single individual, a colossal male, significantly larger than the already high average of the hippos in that region. An animal that had been spotted by reserve guides over the previous months, showing increasingly extreme behavior, crossing the line of what the scientific literature classifies as normal territoriality, chasing other males over unusual distances, blocking access to the water for entire groups, attacking without the display rituals that normally precede a territorial confrontation or mating dispute. What the dry season and the progressive confinement had done to this animal was not merely to increase its natural aggression. It had transformed its territoriality into something that does not exist in the technical vocabulary of biology, but that any criminal investigator would instantly recognize: a serial pattern, a compulsion to eliminate that went beyond defending space, a declaration of absolute sovereignty written in blood. And now the question that remained unanswered until this point: how could a hippo, even the largest and most aggressive ever recorded in the reserve, physically produce that specific wound? The answer lies in one of the most misunderstood weapons in the animal kingdom. The general public imagines that hippos have large, rounded teeth suited to a herbivore. That image is fundamentally wrong. The lower canines of an adult hippo are not teeth. They are swords. They can grow up to 20 inches long, made of dense ivory, one of the toughest biological materials in nature. And there is one detail most people never knew. They are permanently sharpened. Every time the hippo closes its mouth, the lower canines rub against the upper ones. That constant friction does not wear down the tusks. It hones them. It is a process of continuous sharpening built into the animal's own physiology. But the weapon itself does not explain the result. The mechanics of the strike do. A hippo's jaws can open to an angle of up to 150 degrees. When it closes that structure, the muscular force involved exceeds 1,800 psi. For comparison, the bite of an adult lion generates around 500 to 700 psi. On top of that, a 2-ton hippo has the force of impact on its side, which means this is not a crushing bite with distributed pressure. It is a high-speed double puncture followed by the collapse of tons of weight in an upward lateral blow aimed at the junction of another hippo's neck. The cervical vertebrae, though massive, are not wrapped in the same muscular layer that protects the trunk. At the junction between the head and the neck, there is a concentration of major blood vessels, nerves, and a vertebral joint that, under enough lateral pressure, ruptures along with the skin. Tons of muscle and territorial instinct concentrated into a single movement would do that. The alpha opened its jaws to their full extent, 150 degrees of opening, a sight that the evolution of any animal recognizes as a sign of immediate extinction. It positioned the rival at the correct angle, and it delivered the blow. It probably repeated it 2 or 3 times until its opponent reached the end. The first blow caused unconsciousness and ligament rupture. The second and third delivered the final devastation. The rival was dead before it ever had a chance to understand what had happened. Drop a like right now if you've made it this far, because the next part is where this gets even more disturbing. 3 massive kills in 60 days, all adult males, all taken down with the same furious blows. In territorial species, when a dominant male eliminates rivals, the behavior usually stops once the territory is secured. Stress levels fall, the violence recedes. That did not happen here. The reserve biologist's hypothesis is simple but highly explanatory. The confinement caused by the drought did not merely increase the alpha's aggression, it permanently recalibrated its threshold for spatial tolerance. Under normal conditions, the sight of a rival male backing away ends the confrontation. The enraged alpha seems to have lost the ability to register surrender. The trigger for attack is no longer the rival's resistance, it is simply the rival's presence. The river belonged to him. Anything in the river was an offense against his sovereignty, and offenses no longer came in degrees. Every offense received the maximum response. The river waters had become forbidden territory. Other males avoided the stretch controlled by the alpha with a consistency the guides had never observed. Females and calves remained in tight groups on the opposite banks. Crocodiles, which normally share space with hippos under a pragmatic truce, were observed actively avoiding the area. One animal, one stretch of river. A reign of terror that needed no walls or fences to be maintained. It could be felt by every wild creature living there. The alpha of the Mara River is not wrong in any sense biology can judge. It is responding to real environmental pressures with tools evolution built over millions of years. It is the perfect product of a perfect environment for creating a monster. The problem is that this environment was created by forces much larger than any stretch of river. And as long as those forces persist, the Mara will keep producing situations for which we simply have no vocabulary. With the return of the rains and the swelling of the river, the enraged hippo calmed down, but the dry cycle will return in just a few months, and the alpha is still there, submerged, invisible, waiting for the spark of fury to reignite. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. It's completely free, and it helps our work here a lot. Thanks for watching. See you next time.